Today is April 15th, a date that holds a heavy silence in the city of Boston. Every year, at exactly 2:49 p.m., the bells at the Old South Church toll, and for one long minute, the world goes quiet. It's a moment to look back at the finish line and remember how the air changed in an instant, how a day meant for celebration was suddenly filled with a darkness that no one saw coming. This isn't just an anniversary, it's one Boston day. It's the day we look at the empty spaces left behind and try to fill them with something better. Across the city, people are spending this time performing acts of kindness, volunteering, donating, or simply reaching out to a neighbor, because we decided long ago that the best way to answer a tragedy is with a spirit that refuses to be broken. Today, I think of 8-year-old Martin Richard, a boy from Dorchester who should be a young man by now. I remember him for his simple, hand-drawn poster that pleaded for no more hurting people. He loved his family, he loved the Red Sox, and he had a kindness that was far ahead of his years. In this quiet, you can almost hear the laughter of a kid who just wanted the world to be better. I think of Crystal Campbell, whose energy was described by everyone who knew her as a heart of gold. She was a 29-year-old restaurant manager from Medford, known for her infectious smile and her incredible work ethic. She was the person who showed up for everyone else, the one who made sure those around her felt seen and loved. I think of Lingzi Lu, who traveled halfway across the world from China to study at Boston University. She was a gifted musician and a lover of life who used to post photos of the bread she baked and the beautiful things she saw in her new home. She had so much music left to play and so many dreams left to chase in the city she had come to love. And I carry the memory of the men who stood in the gap. Officer Sean Collier, only 27 years old, a man who truly loved being a police officer because it meant he could help people. He was part of the MIT community, a hiker and an adventurer who died at his post. Beside him, I remember Officer Dennis D.J. Simmons, whose bravery during the chaos of the manhunt left him with injuries that eventually took his life. He was a man of immense courage who gave everything so that others could finally sleep in peace. Their lives were cut short in a moment of senseless cruelty, but their impact on this city and on all of us is permanent. They are the reason we stand here today. They are the reason we still believe in the light, even when we are forced to look at the darkest parts of the human soul. On a Monday afternoon in April 2013, the city of Boston was changed forever. But while an entire nation was gripped by shock and grief, one of the individuals responsible was beginning a 3-day stretch of behavior that continues to baffle investigators and psychologists to this day. Instead of hiding or showing signs of panic, he simply went back to his life. In this video, we are looking at the documented actions of the younger brother in the 72 hours following the tragedy. We'll explore the chilling normalcy of his routine, from his social media posts to his college errands, to try and understand the mindset of someone who could walk away from such an event and immediately buy a carton of milk.
A store camera recorded Dzhokhar Tsarnaev calmly enter a grocery store to buy milk.
Only 20 minutes after the incident occurred, while the sirens were still echoing through the streets, he was captured on surveillance footage at a Whole Foods grocery store. He didn't look like a man on the run. He looked like a student picking up groceries. He walked to the refrigerated section and picked out a half-gallon of milk. In a detail that prosecutors later used to show his chillingly calm nature, he actually walked back to the shelf to exchange the milk for a different brand before paying and walking out. There was no shaking, no rushing, and no sign of the gravity of what he had just done. That same evening, he drove back to the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. For the next 3 days, he lived a completely normal life in his dorm. He was seen by his roommates and classmates going to the campus gym for a workout. On Wednesday night, he even attended a dorm party with friends. Those who spoke to him that night described him as relaxed and low-key. He engaged in casual small talk about school and sports, showing no outward signs of stress or guilt, which many analysts suggest shows a profound emotional disconnect or a total lack of empathy for the lives he had just upended. His behavior on social media during this window was equally striking. He remained active on his Twitter account, posting messages that seemed designed to blend in. He tweeted, "I'm a stress-free kind of guy," and even replied to news updates with short, dismissive comments. When a tragic story about a victim began to circulate online, he simply replied with the words, "fake story." This behind-the-scenes look at his actions suggests that his lack of remorse wasn't just a legal defense, but a lived reality where he viewed his actions as a justified mission rather than a tragedy.
Like, he had the balls to come back and just be able to act like okay, be able to act like nothing happened.
That's how he acted. Like,
yeah, that's how he acted. He
not rushed, not nervous.
Nothing. He just acted like it was another day to him.
How convincing was he on Tuesday to you that nothing was amiss?
He was so convincing. I thought as if it was just regular old Dzhokhar. Like, we had a typical conversation. He was not startled. He was not scared. He was not anything. He was just same old Dzhokhar.
The text message where Dzhokhar replied, "LOL," after being recognized on the news is one of the most significant pieces of evidence used to demonstrate his total lack of remorse. This exchange occurred on the evening of April 18th, 2013, shortly after the FBI released surveillance photos of Dzhokhar and his brother. When his college friend, Dzhokhar texted him to say he looked like the man on television, Tsarnaev's casual joking response, "LOL," indicated that he viewed the situation with a chilling indifference or as a shared inside joke among peers. This was immediately followed by a more directive instruction. "Better not text me, my friend. Come to my room and take whatever you want." By using LOL, Tsarnaev maintained his Dzhokhar persona, the laid-back, goofy friend, which effectively disarmed his friend's suspicions and manipulated them into coming to his aid. The bag found in his room at UMass Dartmouth transformed his friends from casual classmates into federal criminals. When Kaderbayev, Azamat Tajayakov, and Robel Philippos entered the dorm room later that night, they discovered a backpack containing things that were used that day at the marathon. Despite the sinking feeling that their friend was actually the suspect, the group took the bag and Tsarnaev's laptop. The decision to remove these items was initially born out of a misguided desire to help their friend avoid trouble, but it ultimately led to charges of obstruction of justice. The disposal of that bag became the central focus of the subsequent investigation and trials. After taking the items back to their apartment in New Bedford, the friends watched news reports that confirmed Tsarnaev's identity as a suspect. In a panic, his friend placed the backpack into a black garbage bag and tossed them into a nearby dumpster. The bag was eventually recovered by the FBI from a landfill after a massive search operation, and it still contained a homework assignment sheet with Tsarnaev's name on it, providing an undeniable link back to the dorm room. Dzhokhar didn't just fail to protect his friends, he actively used their loyalty as a tool to delay his own capture, knowing exactly what it would cost them.
I was gonna, I tried to contact him just to, to make sure that he would be, away from the media, and it turned out to be him. And he was one of the more peaceful religious people I know. He never brought up any sort of political views whatsoever. As I think now, I'm still in shock. I honestly can't accept it, and I'm gonna have to.
While he eventually offered a public apology to his victims in court, he noticeably never addressed the friends whose lives he derailed, even though they were sitting in the same federal system because of him. Dzhokhar's 3 college friends all served federal prison time for their roles in the aftermath. Kadabayev and Tajayakov were sentenced to 6 years and 3.5 years, respectively, for removing evidence from the dorm room, with both being deported to Kazakhstan upon release. Their American friend, Philippos, received 3 years for lying to the FBI, proving that Dzhokhar's cool indifference effectively traded his friend's futures for a few hours of his own freedom.
A sister of the Boston Marathon suspects faces a judge in a harassment investigation. As we first reported last month, 24-year-old Elena Tsarnaeva is accused of threatening a woman who previously had a romantic relationship with her husband. In court today, Tsarnaeva's lawyer argued that the allegations were based on an uncorroborated claim and called his client an easy target.
While Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was awaiting trial in early 2014, he was held under extremely tight Special Administrative Measures, SAMs. During a monitored prison visit with his sister, Elena, an FBI agent overheard him making a flippant and mocking comment that would later be used against him in court. The defense team eventually admitted in a March 2014 court filing that he had made a jocular or gently mocking remark toward the security restrictions that he and his family were under. While the specific wording was initially kept from the public, prosecutors presented it as a detrimental statement that proved he was not taking the gravity of his crimes or the judicial process seriously. Later, during the 2015 penalty phase of his trial, the prosecution used this behavior to bolster their argument for the death penalty. They highlighted that while he was awaiting his fate for the murder of 3 people, he was privately cracking jokes with his sister about the FBI's surveillance and the investigation, even reportedly making a light-hearted reference to the pressure cookers used in the attack. For the families of the victims, this joke served as definitive proof that his stone-faced silence in the courtroom was a mask, and that his eventually televised apology was just another performance. While neither of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's sisters were ever charged in connection with him, the sister he joked to had a separate legal trouble that became a point of public interest during Dzhokhar's time awaiting trial. She was arrested in 2014 for making a threat against a woman in New York, and she pleaded not guilty to that.
Over this video, it clearly shows the Boston Marathon bomber here giving the middle finger to a holding cell camera. And the lawyers desperately are trying to save this guy's life, and they say what you see here is not the entire story.
The moment Dzhokhar Tsarnaev flipped off the security camera has become one of the most debated images of the entire trial, serving as a Rorschach test for his state of mind. It happened on July 10th, 2013, in a small concrete holding cell at the John J. Moakley Federal Courthouse in Boston. This was his very first court appearance since his capture in the boat 3 months earlier. The prosecution played this clip during the death penalty phase of his trial to paint a picture of a remorseless and unrepentant killer. To the government, the gesture was a defiant FU to the American justice system and the victims, proving that even after months of medical care and reflection, his radicalized heart hadn't changed. They argued he wasn't a misguided kid, but a committed soldier of a private war who felt no guilt for the lives he ended at the finish line. However, the context behind his physical condition during that time adds a layer of complexity to the narrative. When Tsarnaev was pulled from the boat in Watertown on the night of April 19th, he was near death. He had sustained a through-and-through gunshot wound to the neck that narrowly missed his spinal cord but shattered his ear canal and part of his jaw. He had also been hit by shrapnel and was suffering from massive blood loss. He was rushed to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, where a team of 9 trauma nurses who had spent the previous several days treating the victims were tasked with saving his life. These nurses faced an almost impossible moral dilemma. They had to provide high-level, compassionate care to the very person responsible for the trauma they were seeing in the other rooms of the ICU. They did it because they believed in the ethics of their profession, but they reportedly made a pact to remain strictly clinical, avoiding any words of endearment, while they cleaned his wounds and monitored his vitals. By the time the middle finger video was recorded in July, Tsarnaev's physical recovery was largely complete, though he still bore the scars of the shootout. His defense team fought hard against the no remorse interpretation of that video. They argued that if you watch the full, unedited footage, rather than just the still image the prosecution showed, you would see a bored, vain 19-year-old who was simply using the camera lens as a mirror. They pointed out that he spent several minutes pacing the cell, smoothing his hair and adjusting his shirt before making the gesture. In their view, he wasn't making a political statement or mocking the victims. He was just a kid acting out or being immature in a high-stress environment. They claimed he even made a peace sign at one point, suggesting the middle finger was more about teenage posturing than a lack of empathy for the lives he destroyed.
Tsarnaev's aunt broke down in tears on the stand. He appeared to wipe away tears as well for the first time all trial.
I really want to scream, but it just, it's hard.
And for Liz Norden, it was too much to take. She spoke exclusively with News Center 5's Kelly Tuthill. Her 2 boys, JP and Paul Norden, each lost a leg in the attack, and she says she noticed Tsarnaev did not publicly shed a tear for them.
He has not showed one bit of emotion at all whatsoever. And then today to see him crying, it was just really very upsetting. He was literally crying. Like he was wiping tears from his eyes. He had a tissue up to his eyes and he was like literally crying.
Tsarnaev then blew a kiss to that aunt as he was escorted out. Norden, so disgusted, says she had to leave the courtroom.
It is extremely hard. I mean, they're trying to paint him something that, he clearly isn't.
You think any of this will play with the jury and one person will feel some sympathy?
I pray to God not.
According to reports and trial testimony, there were a few specific instances where Dzhokhar Tsarnaev broke his stoic demeanor and cried, though the reasons behind these tears were often seen as self-focused rather than for his victims. One of the most private instances occurred shortly after he was captured and taken to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. According to a rumor cited in news reports at the time, a nurse claimed he cried for 2 days straight after waking up in the hospital. While the exact reason for these tears is unknown, he was in severe pain from gunshot wounds and was facing the reality that his older brother was dead and his own life as he knew it was over. Later, during the penalty phase of his trial in May 2015, Dzhokhar showed emotion in court for the first time when his Russian relatives took the stand. He was seen wiping away tears and reaching for tissues as his aunt, Patimat Suleymanova, became so overwhelmed with grief that she began hyperventilating and could only manage to say her name and age before she had to step down. Observers noted that while he remained stone-faced and uninterested through weeks of testimony about the victim's suffering and graphic autopsy photos, he only broke down when faced with the pain of his own family. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's reaction to the most graphic and heartbreaking evidence, was consistently described by court observers as cold and entirely stone-faced. As the prosecution displayed photos of the victims, Dzhokhar sat slouched in his chair, staring blankly at the monitors or straight ahead without flinching. While jurors were visibly shaken, some covering their mouths in horror or weeping openly at the sight of the children's injuries, Dzhokhar remained impassive, showing no sign of discomfort, sadness, or even the natural human instinct to look away from such violence. This same lack of emotion extended to the evidence regarding his own brother, Tamerlan. Despite the defense's attempt to frame Tamerlan as the dominant force Dzhokhar loved and followed, he did not cry or show distress when the details of his brother's violent death and subsequent autopsy were discussed. In another emotional moment involving family, he was seen blowing a kiss to his other aunt as she left the witness stand. This selective display of emotion, crying for his own blood and his favorite childhood Disney characters like Mufasa in The Lion King, but remaining dry-eyed for the child he killed, became a major argument for the prosecution to show he lacked true remorse. At his formal sentencing in June 2015, over 24 survivors and family members faced Dzhokhar Tsarnaev to deliver powerful victim impact statements that highlighted his lack of remorse and the devastation he caused. One of the most haunting addresses came from Bill Richard, the father of 8-year-old Martin Richard, who looked directly at Tsarnaev and told him he chose hate, he chose destruction, he chose death. Before contrasting his family's response, "We choose love, we choose kindness, we choose peace." Patricia Campbell, whose daughter Crystal was killed, called his choices despicable and disgusting, telling him that while life is hard, there was no excuse for what he did. Other survivors, like Rebecca Gregory, who lost a leg in the blast, stood defiantly and told him she was no longer his victim because he was a nobody and a coward who could not look her in the eye. Throughout these statements, many victims questioned why they had seen no remorse from him during the trial, with some noting that he sat impassively even while they described the monstrous self-deception of his extremist beliefs. On June 24, 2015, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev broke more than 2 years of public silence by offering a direct apology to the victims and survivors. Standing before a hushed courtroom, he admitted his guilt without reservation, stating, "I am guilty of it. If there is any lingering doubt of that, let it be no more." He spoke softly in a Russian accent, acknowledging that he had spent the trial learning the names and faces of those he had harmed and watching the unbearable suffering his actions had caused. "I am sorry for the lives that I've taken, for the suffering that I've caused you, for the damage that I've done, irreparable damage," he told the court, while also praying for the victims' relief and healing in the name of Allah. Despite these words, the apology was met with deep skepticism from many in the gallery, who described his delivery as awkward, hollow, and insincere. Survivor Lynn Julian famously called it an Oscar-type speech, noting that it lacked true empathy and seemed like something he was simply supposed to say.
He threw in an apology to the survivors that seemed insincere and just thrown in because he was supposed to, and then ended again with Allah talking about leniency, implying that we should now be lenient to him because Allah says so. And I just was unaware that he would get up and just say whatever he wanted, and that's the law. And I regret having ever wanted to hear him speak, because what he said showed no remorse, no regret, and no empathy for what he's done to our lives.
Prosecutors were also quick to point out what he didn't say. He never renounced terrorism or violent extremism, and he couched much of his statement in religious terms that some felt was an attempt to seek leniency rather than express genuine remorse. Judge George O'Toole remained largely unmoved by the statement, concluding the hearing by telling Tsarnaev that whenever his name is mentioned, what will be remembered is the evil you have done, before formally sentencing him to death. While most survivors rejected the apology, a small number, like Henry Borgard, found a sense of peace in hearing the words, stating that hearing Tsarnaev say he was sorry was enough, and choosing to take the statement on faith.
Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is suing the federal government for $250,000, claiming his treatment at the federal Supermax Correctional Complex Florence has been unlawful, unreasonable, and discriminatory. The Boston Herald reports he references a white baseball cap and bandana being taken and being limited to 3 showers per week.
Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's financial conduct while incarcerated at ADX Florence has become a central point of contention for federal prosecutors, who argue his actions prove a total lack of remorse. Despite being saddled with a $101 million restitution order intended to compensate the hundreds of individuals he maimed or bereaved, Tsarnaev has consistently prioritized his own interests and those of his family. Since his arrest in 2013, his inmate trust account has received over $26,000 in deposits, largely from his legal team, his family, and a disturbing network of fans and strangers who send him unsolicited donations. Rather than volunteering these funds to satisfy the court-ordered payments to his victims, Tsarnaev spent years using the money for his own canteen needs, such as allergy medication and stamps, and most controversially, sent approximately $2,000 to his siblings for gifts, support, and books. This deliberate redirection of funds to his own family, while the families of his victims continue to struggle with lifelong medical bills and psychological trauma, has been characterized by the U.S. government as a calculated insult to the justice system. The tension over his finances reached a boiling point in 2021 and 2022 regarding the $1,400 COVID-19 stimulus check he received while on death row. While many Americans used these funds for survival during the pandemic, Tsarnaev fought a protracted legal battle to keep the money for his personal inmate account. Federal prosecutors eventually had to file a formal motion to garnish the funds, arguing that it was unconscionable for a convicted terrorist to sit on a growing pot of money while his victims remained uncompensated.
Our next story here, it's probably going to infuriate a lot of people. And when I say a lot of people, probably everybody here, especially if you lost a business or really your livelihood during this pandemic, because we're learning that the Boston received a $1,400 COVID check and currently in his inmate fund, he might have more money than what is in your checking account.
A federal judge eventually ruled against him, ordering the $1,400 to be seized and deposited into the Massachusetts Victim Compensation Fund. For survivors, this legal skirmish was not about the dollar amount, but about the principle. It demonstrated that even after nearly a decade in solitary confinement, Tsarnaev's primary concern remained his own financial autonomy rather than any semblance of atonement for the 2013 marathon. Parallel to these financial disputes, Tsarnaev has frequently utilized the federal court system to cast himself as a victim of unlawful and discriminatory treatment, a move that survivors describe as a psychological extension of his original crime. In his 2021 handwritten lawsuit seeking $250,000 in damages, he complained that his mental and physical health were in decline because prison guards had confiscated a white baseball cap and a bandana he purchased at the commissary. The guard's decision was based on the fact that Tsarnaev was famously dubbed White Hat by the FBI and the media during the 2013 manhunt. They argued that his wearing of a similar white hat in prison was disrespectful. By filing a $250,000 lawsuit over a piece of headwear and complaining that being limited to 3 showers a week was a human rights violation, he has effectively attempted to flip the narrative, placing his minor procedural discomforts on the same legal plane as the permanent, life-altering disabilities he inflicted on his victims.
I see in Boston where you have the animal that killed so many people during the Boston Marathon. They just sent his conviction for the death penalty back to the lower court, so they'll argue about that for a long time. It's ridiculous. Think of that.
As of April 2026, this pattern of behavior remains the strongest argument for those who believe he should never be granted mercy or a commuted sentence. His continued focus on self-preservation and personal comfort, combined with his refusal to cooperate with authorities or renounce his extremist views, reinforces the perception that his 2015 courtroom apology was a scripted performance. While his legal team continues to pursue appeals based on juror bias and social media posts from 2015, the survivor community points to his current actions in the Supermax, suing over hats and hoarding fan-donated cash as the true measure of his character. For the people of Boston, these updates are a reminder that while the physical wounds of the marathon may have scarred over, the perpetrator remains an unrepentant figure who continues to use the American legal system to serve his own ends.